So we're here in Avondale, Colorado with Joey Piscotta. And Joey is a third generation farmer. And we're in Avondale, Colorado. And Joey used our Evergreen preservative this year. And Joey, just kind of, what did you notice about the product, first of all?
Well, I think the biggest thing was just getting it out of the field a little sooner.
Okay.
You know, you have them situations where maybe 70–80% of it is good and good to go, but you've got them spots that are a little tough, and rather than having to wait them out, why you can go ahead and go and get it out and not have to worry about them few spots that are there.
Okay. Joey, so is all your hay is irrigated, right?
Correct.
Is that flood?
Furrow irrigated.
Furrow irrigated.
Mm-hmm.
So actually you have spots that lay down in the furrow, and that changes your moisture level.
Absolutely. Not only that, you have difference from the upper end to the lower end, where that water drains as we irrigate and set, so that lower end's maybe a little wetter, a little heavier. I had just built a field the other day. The upper end was perfect, and the lower end was a little tough, but I could go and get it out instead of having to wait that extra day or two to get that to dry.
You know, that's interesting. That's a great observation, because I never thought about that. But you get your pooling down at the bottom,
Right.
which you saturate the soil more. Wow. So you have it on a chrome baler,
Correct.
and what did your moisture tester say when you were baling?
Well, it would you know because of some good, some not, you know, you'd probe a 15, a 14, 12 to 15, and then you'd probe a 19 to 22. And before you'd probe good, and then you'd hit that and you'd say, I better not do it.
Right.
But with this, just turn the Evergreen on and go. And there's even been a case where I kind of know the field, and you can tell the color difference in the ground, where I'd run the Evergreen down at the bottom and then turn it off at the top, just because I didn't need it, really didn't need to waste it. But I think a lot of it too is just a peace of mind.
That's
Just not worrying, rain's coming, go ahead and get it, and take our chances, where you put the Evergreen on and go, and it's kind of peace of mind.
awesome. So Joey, thinking back, I'm sure you were a little nervous when you first started getting it calibrated
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
And when did you really gain your peace of mind when you were doing this? I mean, when did you start feeling comfortable?
I think not very, very long after I started using it.
Okay.
And naturally probably not going to get 100% peace of mind until this hay goes out and I physically see it, but once we got it calibrated, which didn't take a whole lot, it makes you feel better about it.
Sure. So where do you sell your hay? Is it local to a local?
It goes to some of it goes to a local feedlot, and the other goes to a hay processor that makes cubes.
Okay.
The better premium stuff goes to the hay processor.
Sure, you bet. And so, out of your first crop, your first cutting, you used Evergreen pretty well on everything?
Pretty much, and there was some that it was good to go.
Right.
And there really was no sense in putting it on there.
Okay. And so, that first crop was pretty well good quality?
Yes, yeah.
And then, now let's go to the second cutting. What do you find in the second cutting?
Well, second cutting, we started dealing with some rain. So we had, particularly I had a situation where I had some down, got some rain, raked it together, and naturally with your rake, sometimes you get, it'll flip it perfect and sometimes it doesn't. Some of them spots that weren't quite dried out, we was able to bale, and if we wouldn't have baled it that day, it probably would have been there for another 2 weeks. Just because then it rained and we hit a spell of almost every evening getting the rain, and just never would have been able to get it. And in that situation, the regrowth was pretty good. So naturally you're baling and you're picking up some of that green regrowth, and it kind of takes care, and that's where you're getting your moisture from a lot of times, is that regrowth. And not only that, it just, with that regrowth under there, it just won't let it dry like it should.
Right.
And with the Evergreen, was able to kind of combat that.
Awesome. Awesome, Joey. So you raise corn?
Corn, wheat, alfalfa, sorghum, and pumpkins.
Pumpkins, awesome. So the rain for you was good for the wheat.
For everything else, it was fine.
Yeah.
But for the alfalfa, it just created a problem. I tend to leave my hay a little longer. In our area, most generally we get 4 cuttings. 4th cutting's usually not very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I get 3 because I wait a little longer. I think my feed value's a little better.
Sure.
And I think in the end, my tonnage is a little more, and I
Okay.
don't have to deal with that light 4th cutting.
Because you're harvesting pumpkins and
Right.
everything else.
Silage, cutting corn silage, and not having to deal with that 4th
Awesome.
cutting.
So, Joey, do you see using Evergreen now as a management tool for you, or are you do you have faith enough to bale it at that 25%?
I do, but again, I to be completely, I'm gonna have to see them come out of the hay barn
Sure.
and know that they're good, but probing temperatures and moisture, I don't see where it's gonna be a problem.
As you probed, what's the highest moisture you've seen, and what's the highest temperature? Do you remember?
Probably 25, 24, 25.
Okay.
Temperature maybe 90, 92, something like that.
So that's pretty good, because you've had some hot days here
Yeah.
as well. So, have you noticed anything in the hay barn after you've stored it now? Have you seen any moisture condensation up on the roof or
No.
anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Well, very good. I know, Joey, that because I've dealt with your father. Your father was kind of the guy that, he was just kind of the worker guy that, made it all work just because of hard labor and working through it.
No.
You've been more of the manager type, looking at, watching the guy load feed this morning. You knew exactly about kind of what tonnage was on there, and so you have taken the farm to a different level of management, and I'm going to say more in the ounces, okay? Because you're concentrating on techniques and abilities to make things work for you.
Yeah. Well, I think today you have to. I'm getting the same for the stuff we're growing that my grandfather and my dad were getting when they were full go in it.
Sure.
So the ounces that you've got to pay attention to them
Sure.
to make it work. And I've been lucky that my dad hasn't you know, sometimes the old timers, they're set in their ways and, you know, it's, but he's, you know, let me kinda advance with the times and, we've kinda changed our farming operation. We were heavily into the produce end of stuff, onions, watermelons, we still raise a few pumpkins, but we've kinda changed our direction, just because of the demand and the risk and some of that high-end stuff, and so far it's worked for us.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first met your dad, he had a ranch, and he was some partners, and he was raising onions at that time, big in the onion business, and
Yeah,
that's kind of how you came into the farm.
yeah,
You were the salesman for the onions,
right,
and of course you have a beautiful storage facility here for the onions and pumpkins and stuff, and I never met your grandfather, but I've known your dad probably for 30 plus years, and what a great man. And Joey, the highest compliment I could pay you
thank you.
is you followed right from him, and you've taken the farm and made it more productive in different ways. But you got a son coming up?
I do, yeah, he's a junior in high school. I don't know what his plans are, but I mean, that's gonna be his, if it's here, if he wants to do it, if he wants to do something else, that's fine too. Whatever he chooses to do, we'll go forward with that.
That's awesome. That at least he'll have that opportunity
Yeah,
to make a choice.
right.
And so,
And we've done, you know, I'd like to say we've done a lot of business with you, Joe. That a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff we never even saw. Probably 90% of it never even saw it, and never had a bad experience from a lawnmower to a combine.
well, and I appreciate that. And Joey, this was a little bit nerve-wracking for me getting into this Evergreen business, because I went back to a lot of my old customers that I've dealt with, and I wanted to make sure that before we got into this real big, that they had a good experience. And I know I could count on you in giving it a fair trial, and also making sure that everything was calibrated. You put your own system on, you did everything,
And then that was, to say, that was relatively easy. I mean, the setup, getting it going, everything calibrating, to be honest, it was pretty self-explanatory.
awesome. Well, I'm glad that you had a good experience, and it'll be interesting when you start. Although I looked at the hay this morning, and it's beautiful in the barn.
Yeah.
Even the rained on hay looks good, you know. So.
Yeah, I mean, it literally went from probably marginal good quality, fair quality, or it would have been terrible cow hay, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Yeah.
So I mean, that field and that cutting right there probably almost paid for the Evergreen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. So barley harvest is done?
No barley.
No, okay, the wheat is
Wheat.
all done?
Yep.
It did good?
Yes, it did.
Awesome.
Yeah, it actually, a little better than I expected. We had some pretty hard late freezes,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a little worried it was gonna affect it, but yeah, it was a little down from what it normally is, but not very much.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then we put up a lot of wheat straw.
Okay, you baled the straw, and that will go also to your dairy?
Actually
or-
sell that to the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
Prison has a dairy, and they usually take wheat straw, and then a lot of times we bale our corn stalks.
Oh,
And
for
they'll
those
take 'em
guys.
For bedding.
Okay.
So try to utilize everything.
Awesome, that's good. So, this morning, loading the corn silage, so that, you're taking the whole plant corn, but do you combine some corn as well?
Yes, yeah, we chop for silage probably 30% of it,
Okay.
40% of it, and then the rest we combine for grain.
Okay. And do you sell that local to the local?
That goes to the feedlot, yeah.
Oh,
local
okay.
feedlot,
So they're buying dry corn,
dry corn.
right?
Yep.
Let me ask you, let me put you on the spot. We
Okay.
didn't talk about this at all. But if you had your chance, would you sell more corn silage or more dry corn? What?
Depends on the price of corn.
Very, very good.
Uh, to be honest with you, at about $4 a bushel, it's about a break even.
Okay.
You start getting a little more per bushel, why your dry corn's a little better product. The plus side for me with the corn silage is from about the 1st of January to the 1st of September.
Oh,
I get paid every 6 loads, so all summer long I've got revenue coming in to operate off of, and that's, you got to figure that in there because it's worth more than you think.
Sure, you're not at the bank borrowing money.
And the other thing is, if for some reason we get a hailstorm
Oh, yes.
and that corn's no good for grain,
Right.
I can chop it and put it in the pit, and I've got somewhere to go with it.
Right. Very good. And you have your own storage for the dry corn.
For the dry corn, yep, I can harvest it and put it all in the bin. General rule, my hay, my corn, my wheat, I'll harvest it in 17 and sell it in 18.
I see.
So I can go into 18 and pretty much budget what 18's gonna be revenue wise, because I've already sold it, but I have not delivered it until 18. So
Sure.
for budget purposes, that kind of gives me a pretty good idea of where I'm at end of the year type stuff, what we're gonna have yet coming in and what we're gonna have next year, so we can do some tax preparation.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, I know years ago, your dad, in fact, had cattle that he fed out
Right.
here. And when you kind of came into the operation, you changed that.
Well, we used to feed about, the max was about, our feedlot would hold about 3,000 head. And the only way towards the end it was working is we raised all our own feed.
Okay.
The plus side to that was we had it. The minus side was that when we lost money on a pen of cattle, we kind of lost money at the feedlot and the farm. But in 2000, we got completely held out. We never,
Okay.
we did not harvest one crop. So we didn't grow any feed. So we finished out the cattle we had, and we said, well, we'll just wait till we grow the next 2001 crop, and then we never did go back.
Okay.
It just got too hard to go to the sale and bid against the big because the big feedlots, the packers owned them big feedlots. So you'd
Right.
have to bid against them at the sale and sell to them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it again, for the littler guy, it just got to where it just wasn't working. And once we didn't do it, we kind of, sometimes you do stuff because that's what you do.
Right.
We realized that, there maybe is a better way.
Right.
And we quit and we never went back.
And that's, part of that is management,
Yeah.
looking at
Yeah,
what you're doing.
Uh,
Now, Joey, I know that you've taken a little more time with your son. Tell me about coaching and
yeah.
what's that doing for you?
Well, I've to start with, I've coached him in football, basketball, and baseball since he was in the first grade. And we had a group of kids that went through all of it. And now I coach football at the high school.
Okay.
And actually he plays football, basketball, and runs track. But it's sometimes let me back up, Joe. So there was a lot of times my dad didn't have time
Right.
to come and watch me, and I know he wanted to be there, but it just
Right.
the situation here was he couldn't go,
Sure.
and I regretted it, and he regretted it,
Yeah.
and that's one thing I said when he started doing that stuff. Whatever was going on, if he had a game or whatever, so I kind of got into the coaching part of it because then I was obligated.
Sure.
I didn't say, well, I'll go to next week's game.
Right.
I got to do this right now.
You plan.
I got to be there.
Yes.
That way. Well, that that evolved into me being the guy,
Uh-huh.
and which is fine. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. But I through that, a friend of mine coached at the high school, and then he asked me to help when my son was little, and I just have stayed there. But it's a time frame that I can get away from here and leave my phone in the truck and get away, but mostly it's 2.5 hours. Not directly with him sometimes, but I spend with my son every day. During season.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
And that's awesome. Like, my dad didn't get to come to the games either because they were working,
Yeah.
But as we managed, you've done a better job than I did because I always took my phone to the game and I was interrupted. But I just look at your whole operation and you're managing it instead of it managing you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, try to. Sometimes
I know.
that's not the case.
I know, but you got a lot of things going on, For instance, this morning we loaded a semi-loaded silage. Looks like there is another truck out here to load hay. You just got a lot of things going on.
We don't have to look very far to find something to do.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And how many acres are you farming, Joe?
We farm about 700, all
Okay.
furrow irrigated.
All furrow irrigated, all out of the ditch.
And we till all our ground. We plow, turn it because of the furrow irrigation. Today it's kind of the way we farm, to be honest with you, is kind of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
But our end product, I'll put it up against anybody.
Sure.
We're in a good area, good ground, and it's more work, it's more expensive.
Right.
But the end product's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think back, and I know you know this, but a little bit of a story with your dad was how you guys are so ingenious about how you look at things. But I remember him taking the school buses and cutting the windows out
Yeah.
to haul the pumpkins, and it's just a great idea of a farmer using his mind to fix a situation in the field,
Yeah.
So.
And again, it's something you have to do almost to get that little extra. Joe, if we were like a retail store, that if our taxes go up or utilities go up, we could go through and add so much to each product and just absorb it and move on. But we can't do that.
Mhm.
So we've got to do it kind of another way. We've got to try and figure out how to get a little more out of our product, and sometimes that's just cutting, 30 minutes here. Them buses, we used to use tractors and trailers, and sometimes to the south end, it would take 45 minutes to get there with the tractor, 30 minutes with the tractor. Well, you got a crew of 10 guys
Right.
riding on that for an hour there, 30 that, and that's an hour,
Sure.
10 guys, you're basically paying them to do nothing.
Exactly.
Whereas the buses, we were there in 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And it just, we cut harvest time down, we cut expense down. Yeah, that worked pretty good.
You know, you think Joey back, and I tell you, yeah, I see a lot of farmers. I've sold to 3 generations of farmers. And had I sold to your grandfather, that's the way it would have been with you. But we're to that point of efficiencies. We've got to be more efficient. I know that you're also involved in the community, and are you on the ditch board?
No,
Okay.
it was, but not anymore.
So you were on the ditchwater board
Mhm.
for, how many years was that?
Well, my dad spent the majority of that time
Okay.
doing that.
All right.
It was kind of a deal where, once I kind of came in, he had time to kind of take care of that. And then when he quit doing it, I did it for a little bit, and then sometimes you can be, I know guys that spend too much time at meetings,
Right.
and they're not taking care of what they did, but
Yeah.
the guys that were on it, were from our area here, so it all worked out pretty good.
Sure.
But, yeah, I've done some boards. I was on the Department of Corrections board. We use when we were doing produce, and even now with the pumpkins, we use prison labor to do all our field labor. So through that, I got on the